With Green Gold Forestry Initiative, and thanks to USAID support, it is shown that the private forestry sector can expand their activities to help mitigate the effects of climate change and improve the quality of life in native communities.
With the consent of the forestry authorities and in full compliance with the forestry law, we have successfully secured and preserved 254,000 hectares of concessional forest that were previously exclusively allocated for logging purposes. We have a carbon project that covers 183,445 hectares aimed at preventing over 9.9 million tons of carbon emissions over a 20-year period. This as a part of our efforts to combat the impacts of climate change. Our Amazon forests are rich in biodiversity, having identified 256 species of fauna and more than 9,000 botanical species, which we protect and conserve. We combine activities, including the sustainable utilization of non-timber forest products and the sales of carbon credit, to attain profitability from the forest ecosystem without the need for logging. We are committed to promoting the sustainable development of 18 communities, include actively facilitating the titling process of 6 communities to guarantee land tenure. We have registered 13 assembly boards, the main instance for community decision-making, and we have facilitated the preparation of 8 community development plans. We have been implementing a variety of environmental, social, and productive projects, such as the promotion of handicrafts with natural products, poultry farming, among other initiatives of great value.
Bueno, de mi parte yo agradezco a Green Gold y a USAID que nos están apoyando en nuestra titulación para poder lograr el cuidado de nuestros recursos, de nuestro bosque.
Gracias que tenemos a Green Gold y USAID, nos ha apoyado con la contrapartida y conseguimos las máquinas para la elaboración de farina.
Nos ha capacitado para el manejo de aguaje y ahora ya no lo matamos y no estamos pensando en sembrarlo.
Nos contactaron con un cliente internacional y ahora estamos vendiendo a otros países. Sacábamos la fibra de chambira rústicamente, pero gracias a Green Gold y a USAID, ahora tenemos una capacidad de sacar mejor la chambira.
Este proyecto tiene un enfoque de género. Me siento muy orgullosa de ver mujeres ahora, hoy en día, que se sientan involucradas en la conservación del bosque.
También nosotros nos sentimos fortalecidos porque estamos llegando casi a las comunidades que ni el gobierno pueda llegar. Y nos gusta ese proyecto de proteger los bosques.
This cooperation project supports Peru in improving forest management, developing services to its population, and generating inclusive and sustainable development.
So we turned that up to 11 to try and get you back in the room, and I think we partially succeeded. So first of all, just to introduce myself, my name is Stuart Clanahan, and I'm the co-founder and chair of Green Gold Forestry. We set up the company 15 years ago, and we are a Peruvian company. We have about 50 shareholders, all of whom are individuals, and as you will have seen from the movie, we are the very grateful recipients of a large grant from USAID to help develop our sustainable development activities. So starting from nothing, we are now Peru's largest forest owner. We have 460,000 hectares of forest concessions. For those of you who are British, to put that in context, that's larger than the size of Hampshire. And it represents about 2/3 of Peru's forests. So large in British terms and still quite modest in Peruvian terms. What we're going to talk about today is how the nature-based economy can be developed and the opportunities for sustainable development, and in particular, including people who live in communities very much physically at the margin of the developed world. So what we're going to start off with, first of all, is a short presentation by our Chief Operating Officer, Raul Dance, who will tell you about how we work with communities and some of the key objectives that we have there. And then I'm going to chair the panel this morning, and we're going to talk specifically about how nature-based economies can really solve the problems, the intractable problems of sustainable development. So without any further introduction from me, I'll pass you to Raul. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Stuart, for this kind introduction. My name is Raúl Dancé. I am the COO of Green Gold Forestry Peru. I want to express my gratitude for the organizers of this such important event and to all of you for being here today and allowing me to present what we have been doing in partnership with indigenous community groups to protect and conserve the Peruvian Amazon, the Amazon of everybody. Well, long ago, GGF realized that in order to have a flourishing business, could you please give me the pointer to pass the video? Thanks. All right, thanks. Well, I was saying that long ago, GGF realized that a flourishing business requires thriving communities. Well, the realization of this led us to see our community neighbors not as beneficiaries of our actions, but instead as our partners. I always tell to my colleagues here that community development is, for us right now, our core business, or one of our core businesses. Let me see. For you. Okay, so since then, no, go back please a little bit. Thank you. Well, since then, we have implemented what we call a true indigenous inclusion model. Let me tell you that in 2021, after the COVID, we performed an evaluation on the communities. We established a social baseline to understand better the living condition of our community partners, to understand also what their needs, their expectation about us, and the potential impacts of our work. What we found was shocking at first. We are working with communities that are living under the poverty line with less than $1 per day. So GGF start implementing a set of activities in order to help them, to take them to a different scenario in where they can own their own lands, they can make their own decisions, and they shape their future. Well, since then, GGF has been involved in supporting the titling process of many communities in the Napo River. We are almost formalized all the community assemblies where they make decisions, and we implement plenty of community development plans to advocate for and allow them to look for government investments to access elementary services. But furthermore, we deploy a technical team to work together with indigenous community partners in order to develop productive projects. We at least have one project running right now in each community. We are also working with children in the schools in order to teach them how they manage their resources and their waste. We have been implementing a gender plan to improve the participation of women in decision-making inside the communities. We also train more than 200 people in different natural resource management. And in the span of the last 2.5 years, we were able to create more than 450 jobs, permanent and temporary jobs. We know that this endeavor is huge, but we are committed to continue supporting our indigenous partners for the benefits of them, of their children, and for the forest. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your attention.
Raoul, thank you very much indeed, Raoul. We wanted to start off just showing you the impact on people's lives in the forest of a successful carbon-based conservation project. Our core business model at Green Gold is to take logging concessions and in essence decommission them. So no more logging, and we focus on conservation. Now through that, we can earn carbon benefits, which of course will be certified and verified through a Vera methodology called VM10. We are literally, I think, 1 or 2 weeks away from successfully completing our first audit, and the first carbon sales that we will have, the first revenues, significant revenues into Green Gold, will come from the sale of about 650,000 tons of VCUs. So 2 things to take out from this. The first is everything that you have seen that we've been doing has been supported by our own investment to date. This is without sales of carbon credits. We can do a lot more than that. The second thing is that our core business model is conservation, but in order to make conservation work, we have to change the economics of the forest. We have to create sustainable economic opportunities for people who live in remote regions. What we have discovered, and you'll hear it today from our panel, is that there are huge opportunities, we believe, to create valuable, life-changing economic opportunities for people who live in the forest. And some of those are being unlocked by the application of new technologies. So we'll talk about that as well. So just first of all, to introduce our panel, we're going to be talking about the nature-based economy. In fact, we've got representatives from all ends, if you like, of the nature-based economy. So I'm going to start off to my left here, Juana Maria Reyes, who is Innovation and Market Manager for VW Volkswagen Climate Partners, based in Munich, but originally from Colombia. Next to Juana, we have Gareth Hughes, who is my co-founder of Green Gold Forestry. He has lived in Peru for more than 30 years and is the Chief Executive of Green Gold Forestry Peru. Next to Gareth is an old friend of ours and the company, Jenny Henman. Jenny has been incredibly successful in working with smallholder farmers in Peru, and this year has planted more than 315,000 indigenous species of trees with those farmers. And we're going to ask Jenny about how she managed to achieve that and what is needed to scale that up even further. Then we have Fabian Schmidt-Pramoff, again an old friend of the company, who spent many years working for the German development agency, GIZ, and today is the business development manager for a new company, Biometrio, which we're going to hear a little bit about. And at the far end, and Mark and I started off without grey hair, is Mark Wheatcroft. He is head of Mizuho's sustainable finance for the Americas and for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Mark and I have known each other for far too long and have many stories to tell, of course. But it's amazing how people in finance today are re-interacting or interacting again with people who are involved in the nature agenda. So those are the introductions, and I'm going to ask Juana, first of all, to tell us a little bit about how Volkswagen, which you will all know is heavily involved in decarbonizing their product range, how Volkswagen Climate Partners works with nature-based solutions and what they're looking to achieve in doing that.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Yes, I mean, for us as Volkswagen Climate Partner, nature-based sector represents one of the most strategic carbon offset scopes, since it is one of the most urgent drivers of climate change. So that's why we internally prioritize those in the short term. That's why at Volkswagen Climate Partner, we try to have a balanced portfolio, including different MBS intervention types. Just as an illustration, we have afforestation as well as agroforestry systems, but these are combined with other, let's say, land management approaches such as grassland, management activities, forest protection, or you could also have, or you can see in our portfolio, agricultural land management projects. So we prioritize as well countries where you can find some land management problems. For instance, countries where you have high deforestation rates or some land management opportunities for improvement, so to say. And we do that with the fact of combining where Volkswagen has facilities and production facilities. So that's what we do.
And just to ask you, how much, when you look at a project, are you looking just at the carbon impact, or are you looking at social and other environmental projects?
Of course, we see projects. Thanks for this question. We see projects in, let's say, we want to see the entire landscape, and that's why for us, for our internal assessment and project selection, we also think of the socio-economic benefits. For us, it is super important to see those, and that's why the more socio-economic benefits a project can contribute or can boost, the more interest we have, as we consider that communities are very important and relevant. It's a prerequisite to have a successful MBS intervention. And of course, these socio-economic benefits, they could be seen in different labels depending on the standard you are working with. But all in all, nature-based solutions and these co-benefits associated are part of the most important priority for Volkswagen Climate Partner when it comes to nature-based solutions. And we have as well some ongoing due diligence process where we try to check how, we try to identify the risk, and we try to put in place different mitigation measures in order to avoid any social conflict and be able to have an impactful project, not only from the environmental side, but also from the socio-economic one.
Thank you. So I'm going to turn to Gareth now. We can talk, and people have talked, of course, about carbon and VCUs. But Gareth, how do you see a nature-based economy? What does it comprise?
Thank you, Stuart, and good morning to everybody. Clearly, our project is based and will depend on carbon credits and the sale of carbon credits for the next 20 years. But we also recognize the huge importance of non-timber forest products and other activities such as tourism, scientific study, and other activities which will develop and can create long-term sustainable economic development. So we are working within our concessions to look at all of the different non-timber forest products that we have. We are developing those products, and we see as we move forward a very important aspect of the project and the business will be to investigate the products that we can, or the transformation of the raw materials of fruit, palm oils, and other products that we can take out of our concessions, and how we can develop those products into saleable commercial products for the wider business community. So that's hugely important. We've talked about the concessions, and we've talked a little bit about our communities. I should point out the communities are not inside the concessions. So the communities live outside, they have their own lands, often bordering our concession or very close to our concession. But we, apart from the jobs that we are creating inside our concessions, collecting fruit or doing inventories or whatever, we're also looking at the opportunities that the communities have to develop activities on their own land, which could be a further carbon project on their land, or the development of other activities of non-timber forest products, agricultural projects on their own land, which will help the long-term sustainable economic development of the communities. And we very much we hear a lot about the problems of bridging the gap between big finance and smaller projects or on-the-ground activity. We very much see ourselves, especially after the experience we've had, as a kind of bridge. We are going to facilitate the communities and allow them to develop their own opportunities and their own products, and which we can facilitate through the scientific and the investigation that we do on the products to begin with, but also by opening international markets and helping them to export their products. And this is all in the context of what Raul mentioned, as seeing the communities as our partners, and we very much we have the same threats, we have the same risks, we have the same issues, because we're neighbors. And when everybody benefits, we feel that we're in a much more secure and comfortable and profitable situation.
Gareth, I'm going to ask you specifically, we're building it's going to cost more than $1 million. We're building a fruit processing plant in the forest. It's about a day and a half by boat from Iquitos, which is the main city in our part of the Amazon. And that factory will process natural grown fruits from the forest into oils, which will be sold into the international markets. Gareth, I mentioned briefly in the introduction about the possibilities that technology improvements offer us. Can you just give us a little colour on how we can do that in such a remote place?
Yes, where we are in the Amazon, key issues have always been transport, energy, and communication. And by coincidence or good luck or just timing, generally we've found solutions, or solutions have been provided to communication. We now have internet connections via Starlink. It's the most incredible system you can imagine. Put up your solar panel, log on to your internet, and you're away. You can talk, you can download videos, you can send maps and photographs. Communication in the middle of the jungle has become completely accessible, number one. Number two, solar power and solar panels, the whole technology is developing daily, but we've got to the stage where power is now easy to acquire in the jungle. So anywhere where we need power, we can set up solar systems, and as Stuart mentions, our plant is going to be running on solar power, and this is another huge step. This will also provide refrigeration, which is massive for any sort of production of fish or meat products. And we think we've solved two major issues. We still have to solve the transport issue. It still takes a long time to move up and down the river. But these are major steps forwards, and we think it can revolutionize around the world how the economic development of these areas and communities can increase.
Thank you, Gary. Well, that's great. And you've heard from Raul about the importance of working in partnership with local people. But gaining the trust is not something you can acquire overnight. I'm going to ask Jenny, has got, I think, 12, 15 years experience in Peru of working with smallholder farmers, maybe longer. Jenny, how do you get the trust of local people, and how long does it take?
Yes, well, firstly, Stuart, thanks a lot for inviting me to be on the panel. And I also wanted to thank Hayley and Warren. I don't know if people have looked in their goodie bags yet, but they generously have sponsored the planting of 300 trees in the Peruvian Amazon through Plant Your Future, my charity. So for every person here today, they've planted a tree. And yes, turning to the important question Stuart asked about building trust with smallholders. It's complicated, and it takes a long-term presence and patience and being very consistent. But essentially, we're working with smallholder farmers who've have a subsistence lifestyle in the absence of the project, and sadly, that has largely involved cutting down trees and deforesting and degrading their environment, which puts them in a vicious cycle, like in the absence of our project, of sort of declining returns. So I would say some of the key things in terms of gaining trust have been making sure that we really are listening to them and co-designing the project with them. So making sure that we understand their situation pre-project. Obviously, it's quite challenging because we're looking to restore the environment, and they have been the people that have driven the deforestation. But, in terms of the conversation around that, obviously it's one that's occurred because they're subsistence farmers and they had no alternative. So we're sort of trying to address that. They are the people that cut the trees down, but at the same time, they've now realized that was, in many ways, quite a poor decision, and it was often because they were ill-informed by previous government programs which encouraged them to do that or gave them resources to do that. And obviously, as we all know, the rainforest is not a suitable environment for growing arable crops or really grazing cows in the absence of trees in the landscape as well. So it's about working with them and building their understanding that the rainforest isn't particularly suitable for arable cropping, and that actually agroforestry or other types of farming which brings trees back into the landscape would be more beneficial to them. So it's a process of training and building their educational understanding around that. And our model is really a learning by doing model. There's a huge problem of trust with smallholders in the Amazon in general. There's been many, many failed projects. There's been many people bringing short-term promises of things that are going to help them and that haven't. These are very vulnerable people. They live on the edge. They haven't got that much resilience to crisis. So we have to be very responsible and consistent when working with them, try to be honest about what the project's going to bring. And I think we've had a presence there for quite a while now. As Stuart said, Plant Your Future's been working there for over 12 years. And obviously there's a word, people start hearing from their neighbours, these guys are actually quite serious. They didn't just plant the trees with us. They did bring us fertilizer. They did carry on bringing us technical support. We learned how to control pests. I think what's very important is not to raise expectations too high, that doing agroforestry is going to lead to them being millionaires. It's going to help lift them out of poverty and allow them to earn a decent livelihood, which hopefully can help improve their well-being. So its trust is very fragile. It can be easily lost. There's a lot of confusion. Often people, there can be people saying things that aren't true about our organization. So it's about having a consistent presence and trying to be not too reactionary and to deliver on our promises.
And what do you need to scale up?
So scaling up, many things are needed to scale up. It's difficult to scale a smallholder project very fast. And I think that's actually potentially quite an important point for people in the room maybe, because I think many people have large minimum ticket sizes, or they come to Plant Your Future saying, can we do 10,000 hectares next year? Like, we'd really like to. I would really like to. It's not that I'm not ambitious, but it's very difficult with smallholders to scale at that pace, because there's also as Gareth was explaining, there's challenges in terms of logistics of scaling there. So we do need more funds, but funds which can be delivered in, over time in a way that meets the size of our organisation and our scaling up goals. I think another just major point I wanted to make on scaling up is, which I think fits in very well with the broader, working alongside other organizations like Green Gold Forestry who are in the Peruvian Amazon, there's a need to build soft skills for the green economy much more broadly in the Peruvian Amazon. We can't just go from having no green economy one day to having huge green economy. There's a need to build critical thinking skills, IT skills, general professionalism. Most people in the Peruvian Amazon work in the informal economy. And with the growth of the green sector, we need to actually build those skills which allow them to take on not only the kind of technical skills that are needed for planting a tree, but as a manager or, so managing the whole system. So I feel that there's a need for building soft skills, and that is something which often people aren't putting money into. People want to put money into just planting a tree, but for that tree to survive and thrive and to have this whole ecosystem of support to the smallholder, we need a broader range of skills. So I really encourage people to think more broadly in the investments as well about how we're going to collectively get to where we want to get to.
Tony, thanks very much indeed. Well, here's someone with a lot of experience in Peru and also a new company, Biometrio. So, Fabian, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing today and how that fits in with the broad agenda for sustainable development?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, thank you for the invitation to the panel. It's a pleasure to be here with you, a very experienced crowd. And in November last year, we established a new company. It's called Biometrio Earth, and we are an ecosystem monitoring company that combines different technologies to bring radical transparency to nature-based solution projects and also allow for next level storytelling. So what we basically do, we combine remote sensing with in situ sensors, mainly microphones and cameras. We collect a lot of data, we have an AI, and we analyze the data and provide our clients a solution to be different than other market actors and to measure biodiversity in a standardized and cost-efficient way.
Thank you. And we've heard some talk so far. I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about the biodiversity credit markets. What's the opportunity? And actually, generally, but what about the opportunity for us in Peru?
Yeah, I think the previous panel, the lady from the Environment Bank already gave a very good overview of the complexities and also the opportunities of the biodiversity credit market. Having worked in development cooperation for many years, I feel that we really have to be cautious when we talk about nature-based solutions because they deliver so many impacts, and we really have to look at all the impacts they deliver. You already mentioned we have social impacts, we have climate impacts, we have biodiversity impacts. And in this whole discussion, we have this carbon tunnel vision. We only talk about carbon. We compare the projects based on their carbon performance, but it's not so easy. And what we hope, you know, there's so much new technology. So first of all, it's much easier to measure impacts and also to measure biodiversity. But it's really important if you're trying to sell a new product, listen to the buyer side. Like, if you cannot explain a biodiversity credit to an ESG manager, then it's difficult to establish a biodiversity credit project. So I think we will have to work for many years with carbon credits, with high biodiversity impacts and high social impacts, and at the same time scale the biodiversity market. And looking from a climate and biodiversity finance perspective, like the lady from the European Union, she showed us again what planetary crisis are we facing at the moment. And like the biodiversity finance gap is around $900 billion per year. And the climate finance gap is 4.5 trillion. So we have to mobilize a lot of funding to projects who tackle these crises, and that's the good thing about nature-based solutions. They tackle several crises. They can help to tackle the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, and they can generate jobs in regions that don't receive a lot of state support. So it's, I think, really important to have an open mind and to be realistic.
Thank you, Fabian. Well, just another statistic for you, if you've got your pens out. There are about 60,000 species of trees in the world. 17,500 of those trees, species of trees, are critically endangered, which means that without human intervention, they will go extinct. So it's a third of all trees by species will go extinct. 37 of those are in Peru. And I can tell you that we will be looking at green gold forestry together with Jenny and Fabian and others to put restoration programs in place for those trees to prevent them from going extinct. And we believe we can earn so-called biodiversity impact credits from doing that, which will be another source of income for local people conserving real biodiversity and having a measurable positive impact on reducing extinction risks. Okay, so now, Mark, Mizuho is one of the world's largest financial institutions. It's got a $1.9 trillion balance sheet. Can you fund or help fund projects like ours in Peru?
Well, first of all, Stuart, thank you for the invitation. I'll hold off on the answer if you don't mind for a couple of seconds. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and continue to be inspired by people like yourselves in the room who are helping me navigate a language I didn't realize existed until about 3 or 4 years ago. So the short answer is no, but I'm optimistic that change is happening. As you point out, Mizuho is a large Japanese megabank. We're one of the top 10 financiers globally for many of the world's largest corporate blue chip clients and a number of sovereigns as well. And through the journey of financing and obviously the overarching scrutiny now around incorporating sustainability, not just working with our clients, but also in terms of our own behaviors and activities, it's helped us on this relatively rapid journey to try and see how we can integrate that for a positive impact in terms of the way that we're allocating capital. We're a sort of a traditional financier, financing products, loans and bonds, also project finance, but we have the tools that we can transfer into nature-based solutions. There is some knowledge, obviously, of working within compliance markets and securitizing allowances from there. So again, tools that can be transferable. But other things that I've heard this morning are around establishing a business case. It's a new asset class. So what about confidence within that asset class to sort of crowd in that money and generate that blended finance? There are already activities by a number of you in the room in terms of fund construction, so to get indirect ways of financing nature. And many of the corporates that we deal with are also grappling with many of the new disclosure regulations. Again, TNFD is another one which is really going to be pushing the boundaries of those that have yet to get their heads around TCFD. And also for an organization like ourselves, you know, we've been through the looking at financed emissions and how to be working on a sort of decarbonization path. You know, we're going to have to start thinking about hiring new people, different people, to get our heads around how we're managing our biodiversity risk. But I'm excited by the fact that that is happening, and we are exploring this new ecosystem at pace to try and understand how we can affect, maybe not in the interim period direct finance, but certainly some of the indirect financing that corporates need, sovereigns need, or indeed through fund distribution.
Well, so thank you. So some more numbers for you. We all know, I think, that the world emits around about 40 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent a year. Japan has a footprint of about 1.2 billion tons, and it's in an unfortunate position because, of course, it's post-Fukushima, it's heavily reliant upon fossil fuels, and it has got one of the world's largest industrial bases. And Japanese corporations now, of course, are facing the challenge of dealing with Europe, for example, with carbon border adjustment taxes. They service companies like Microsoft or like Apple, which are demanding carbon neutral supply chains. So Mark, a question for you in general terms, and we're going to probably hear more about this today. Article 6, getting countries to deal with each other, to help each other leverage, if you like, their strengths to dealing with climate problems. Is that going to be something you think that unlocks potential for scale in achieving nature-based transition at a whole economy level?
I'll answer that as long as I don't have to define what corresponding adjustments are. Is that all right?
Look,
I think that this will add some real validity to the market if there are sovereign-to-sovereign type trades, whereby a developing or emerging country can monetize their natural capital for the purpose of uplifting socioeconomic growth within their country, and there can be a transfer of technology exchange as well. So we've discussed this a number of different times. And you're right, Japan is somewhat, I think their decarbonization path is going to be very different given geographically challenged, and turning that economy around is going to take some time. But we've already seen upstream equity investments coming out of Japan. We've seen interest in both pure play nature-based solution investments and fund investments. So there's that real catalytic move following their net zero 2050 commitments in October to really try and learn and understand. And if you think about the LNG market 20 years ago, there was a lot of co-investment and offtake from Japan as they learnt around how that market worked. We're seeing the same sort of behaviors today. But I do think that having a sovereign validation in a market that lacks a little bit of regulation and transparency for a heavily regulated organization to get involved in is going to be critical in terms of bringing that capital in.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm going to have a few questions from the audience, but I want to just give a little sort of how we join this all up together. So what we're hearing is this. We believe at Green Gold, and there are many other examples around the world of successful projects that have that positive impact in terms of transition in the economy for local people. But we are project managers. Even Green Gold, with our 460,000 hectares of forest, represents less than 2/3 of 1% of Peru's forest cover area. The opportunity, the finance, if you like, wants to work with very large corporations and with countries. The projects are able to make that transition gap, if you like, between the local people and those international markets. The questions we've touched around today on how to scale that. So to sort of, if you like, reveal our cards from Green Gold's side, we believe that there is very significant opportunity to scale in Peru, and we believe that companies like ours in other countries will realize the same. We are, of course, underpinned by the integrity of the carbon market. We are absolutely confident about our baselines and our additionality impact. We're not a RED Plus project, we're an improved forest management project. But actually, I think the real opportunity comes when you get ministries of finance saying, can we get into the industry of nature-based carbon capture and storage at a national level? And that's where Mark and his team of bankers can interact. Then the Ministry of Finance says to their colleagues in other ministries, who can we get on the ground to deliver the results that we want to deliver in an Article 6 trade? That's, I believe, the opportunity for all of us in this sector. I think there will be consolidation amongst project developers, and I think we'll see large corporations getting more involved in delivering projects. The last vision I have, which I just want to share with you, is I have a photograph in my computer. It's a desert, and it's 1920, and there are 3 or 4 people sitting outside of a tent, and there is a camel there. And at the time, these were amongst the poorest people in the world. They literally had almost no income at all. That was Saudi Arabia. So what we wanted was beneath the sand. And it was beneath the sand that was occupied by some of the poorest people in the world. Today, what we want are the ecosystem services, the carbon capture and storage potential, the biodiversity of some of the world's most important habitats in the forests. And the poorest people in the world live in those forests. By changing the economic environment, we can uplift people out of poverty, and we can allow them to confidently achieve their life goals. That's what we want to try and achieve, and we believe we're on the path towards achieving that. So I realize now that Haley's going to stand up and say, I've got 2 minutes left, but let's take 2 questions from the audience. Toovey. Could you introduce yourself and then question?
Hi, I'm Marcela from Tierra Foods. Huge congratulations for what you have achieved. Can you talk us a little bit through when you had this idea back in 2008? Where not very many people were talking about, the things that you have achieved in spades, and congratulations. So how was the journey of funding the first hectares, and who was involved? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, in 2008, we started off as a sustainable logging company. That was our goal, and we were FSC certified, and we were doing everything the right way. We also accompanied our journey with a long-term scientific study of our impact, which we did with Cambridge University. And basically, we discovered over a 10-year period that in order to be profitable, we could not be sustainable. There was no way. So that led us to a dilemma in 2016-17, which coincided with the Paris Agreement and changes, generally improvements in the possibilities for a carbon market, and we made a decision to investigate the possibilities of transitioning from logging to conservation, and that's how it all started. And we started in 2018-19. Of course, then we were hit by the pandemic, like everybody. But we carried on through and got the project that started in 2020.
Thank you. One more question before Haley stops me. Oh. The guy with the fingers at the front. Okay, Phil, make it quick.
Yes, Phil Cottle, Forestry. We insure forests all over the world and forest carbon. My question is this. For projects, you need a team, don't you, on the ground, working with communities for a long time. Who is funding this education and training of extension workers on the ground in any country to, if you like, incubate potential projects?
I'll answer that one. So we have 50-something shareholders, and most of them have turned grey, like me. This has been a long-term investment. I'm very fortunate myself to have very good connections in the financial services industry. A lot of people are interested in doing the right thing. So our company has been founded by private money. As I say, we've been waiting a long time, and my hair's changed colour. We are also, as I said earlier, we're very fortunate because of our commitments to not just to conservation, but to the development of communities, and because of the way in which we think about that, and the innovative way in which Raul and his team has coped with that problem, we were actually asked to tender to the USAID for a grant to help us over that transition. We got a very significant grant. I know that they're pleased with us, and we believe that there is an opportunity, as I think Gareth mentioned earlier, to really expand what we're doing so that community members themselves can directly benefit from the value that they can create in the global market for carbon credits. So that's going to be my last word, I think, on this one. I think Haley is now jumping up and down. So thank you very much indeed.